Thank you everybody for joining us today. We're super excited to be here to present on the importance of showing up, really wanting to share the importance of school attendance. My name is Jesus Araujo. I am a coordinator of the Student Support Services Department here for the school district. And with me today, co-presenting is Ms. Alicia Shane from the District Attorney's Office. So we're super honored to have her with us today, and I'm gonna be sharing a few slides, the first portion of the presentation, and Ms. Shane will close us out today. So thank you guys all for being here, as this is a very important topic for us in regards to having our families understand the importance of student attendance and why it's so important for our students to be in school as consistently as possible. So on our agenda today, we're going to be covering an understanding, obviously, the importance of attendance. What does the research say? Our district's attendance process, and a little bit of partnering for success and some resources um, is what we're going to be covering today. So on our first slide here, we want to just make sure folks understand the difference between truancy and chronic absenteeism. So a few years back, the state has gone away from just tracking truancy, which essentially um, only counted unexcused absences and or tardies over 30 minutes that were unexcused, or class cuts that were counted under the truancy umbrella. The state a few years back said we need a shift from that because we're missing some students that are missing a lot of school, but they're missing a lot of school on the excuse side of the house. So they passed some education code regarding chronic absenteeism. So now under chronic absenteeism, the state is counting basically all absences count. We're talking about illnesses, excuse absences. It can be family emergencies. Anything, if the student is out of class and not learning, the state is counting it towards chronic absenteeism. It also counts independent study requests. If those independent study requests are unsuccessful or the students don't complete their work and they get an incomplete uh, outcome of that, then that also counts towards a student's chronic absenteeism day. So just wanted to make sure that the state has now shifted, and that way we notice the difference here. So in regards to chronic absenteeism, we have, multiple impacts here. So students with chronic absenteeisms are, in time, are going to be over a year behind their academic peers. There's a correlation between absenteeism and low academic performance, absenteeism and not being connected to your peers. There's a connection between absenteeism and not feeling connected to your school, and absenteeism and having reduced life skills. And obviously, all of that, at the end, when our kids get older, um, is makes it more difficult for them to have a successful future. So it is important that we try to address this issue as early as possible. So there's a correlation between chronic absenteeism and students reading at grade level by third grade. So in if the student has begins to be chronically absent in kindergarten, obviously having lower levels of literacy in first grade and lower achievement as far as fifth grade. So there's a Rhode Island study that found compared, so there's kindergartners who attend regularly to those that were chronically absent. And out of that study, 20%, the students who were chronically absent scored 20% lower in reading and math in later grades, and the gap continues to grow. They were 2 times as likely to be retained in a specific grade and 2 times likely to be suspended by the end of seventh grade from school. So much more likely to continue to be chronically absent as they grow. So it's just something to be aware of, and that's why we're really focused on reaching out to our families as early as TK. So the long-term impacts of chronic absenteeism, it really becomes like a cycle, right? When children are chronically absent in both kindergarten and first grade, they're much less likely to be reading at grade level by third grade. Students who are not reading at grade level by third grade are 4 times more likely to drop out of high school. By sixth grade, chronic absenteeism becomes one of the leading indicators that a student will drop out of high school. By high school, attendance is a better dropout indicator than even test scores. A student who is chronically absent for any year between 8th and 12th grade is 7 times more likely to drop out. So there's this cycle that starts at an early age that our goal is to break this cycle if we can as early as possible, to partner with our families and intervene and offer supports so this cycle doesn't continue as the kids grow older. So this is just a study that talks about every chronic absenteeism and a higher percentage of students dropping out. So you can see that the earlier it starts, the later it starts, the higher the percentages go. So of students dropping out of high school. So the later the kids are starting to become chronically absent, a highly likelihood of students thinking of dropping out when they reach high school. So it is definitely something that we want to address as early as possible, as we don't want any of our students dropping out. So this is a question that I pose to our families. On average, how many days per month does your student miss school? So just a question for you to answer within yourselves. Another follow-up question to that is, on average, how many days per year does your student miss school? Now, if you're asking yourself and saying, I'm not really sure, I haven't been keeping track, Jesus. So one of the suggestions that we're going to be making for you guys is to keep a calendar around. Have it on your refrigerator, have it somewhere posted in the house where you do keep track of how many days your student is absent. So that way you have a visual reminder to remind us when life gets busy and folks are working, kids are playing sports, involved in other extracurricular activities. It's very important that we don't lose sight of how many days the kids have missed. So a little bit of our notification process. So we use a system that's called school status. So any automated, essentially school status is an automated third-party system that we partner with here in Alum Rock that sends out our letters when students reach certain thresholds. So this is just a step-by-step of what students will get what letters and when. So if a student registers 3 absences or 3 tardies over 30 minutes or any combination thereof, a student will generate a first notification of truancy at that point. So that you would get that in the mail. You will also get a text reminder that there's something coming home, and if we have an email on file, you'll also get an email version of the letter. So that would be the first notification that you guys would get in writing from the district, and this is on the truancy side of the house. So this is where unexcused absences are being registered, that you would get such a letter. If 3 more absences happen after that, or 3 tardies over 30 minutes that are unexcused, you will get a second notification of truancy at that point, and families at that point will be asked to come to meet with the principal and try to create a attendance improvement plan and try to see what the barriers are that are causing the student not to attend school on a regular basis. And the school is to try to provide some resources at that time at an early stage to try to remedy the chronic absenteeism. So if things that meeting happens and things don't improve, and three more absences are generated or tardies over 30 minutes after that, then you will get a third notification of truancy from our system. And at that point, we can schedule the family to come in and attend a school attendance review board hearing. So you might have heard the term SARB, but that's what it means, the school attendance review board, where we would now meet at the district level because things haven't improved, and now district staff and district support staff will meet with the team and the family to try to support with the absenteeism. If absences continue to accrue, then our last resort here is going to be for us to refer the case to Ms. Shane and have it presented at court. Um, like I said, I want to make that very clear. That is our absolute last resort. We try our best to work with our families and try to that only happens if things are just not improving after we made multiple attempts to try to support the absenteeism. So in general, as an overview, when you say, well, Jesus, what is good attendance, right? So in general, good attendance would be a student that's missing fewer than 5% of the school days. So that would be generally a student that misses 8 to 9 days a school year. Now, we understand that students get sick. We understand that family emergencies happen. So even with that, right? If the student was to miss some days because of those reasons, you would still be considered in the good attendance if you're below fewer than 5%. You would be considered A student will be considered at risk if the student misses between 5 and 10% of the school year. So which will be between 10 to 18 days, right? Um, just so you can kind of gauge that. And then obviously if the student is missing more than 10%, then that's when the student is would meet the criteria of being identified as a chronically absent student per the state criteria. So 10% or more, there's 180 days in a school year. 10% of that would be 18 days. So a student missing 18 days or more would be considered a chronically absent and be reported as such in state reporting when we report at the end of the year. So a little bit of our Alum Rock totals and you can see that, we have had some difficulties with chronic absenteeism in our district. In the 23-24 school year, this is our district chronically absent rate was at a 23.4. So if you can imagine, close to 23% of our district was chronically absent in 23-24. So it's a big number, right? And it's a number that we are aware of and that we are making efforts to try to work with our staffs and continuing to do as early outreach as possible to try to bring that number down. So that's 23-24. In 24-25, the district made some improvement. So we made some strides. The schools were setting up attendance improvement teams. They were meeting with families. They were meeting and trying to support students. Our community liaisons were conducting home visits. We were connecting. Our SLS supervisors were connecting families to resources, to mentorship programs. So we did see a decrease from the 23.4% in 23-24 to at the end of 24-25, a 20.8%. So we say, what's the goal for this year, right? The goal for 25-26 for us, and this is going to be in collaboration and partnership with our families, is going to be a 16%. So it's going to be we want to continue the momentum that we saw at the end of last year. So we are shooting for a 16% chronically absenteeism rate district wide at the end of 25-26. So we're up for the challenge, but with the reminder that we can't do this alone, and this is why we're seeking your partnership in this work and trying to limit the absenteeism if possible, right? We understand that things do come up and life happens, but we're going to talk a little bit about how we can plan ahead for that. So this is just some tips and recommendations from us in regards to how to keep strong attendance, right? So continue to make attendance a priority in your household, set by setting up regular bedtime and morning routines, um, have making sure our kids are getting a good night's sleep. I've been doing this for over 17 years, and I can tell you that I've attended many SARB hearings, and we do have some students that are going to sleep really late. So we'll ask students, "Hey, what time is your bedtime?" And students as early as third, fourth grade will say, "I'm going to sleep at 10:30, 11 p.m. at night," which is extremely late to be very honest with our families. Like that's way too late for kids to be going to sleep. Our kids need their rest, they need their sleep for them to be able to wake up with energy and be ready to learn the next day. So, setting that good, nighttime routine is gonna be recommended. Um, Prioritizing health, ensuring that your child has the required immunizations and you're taking them to their regular scheduled checkup appointments, etc., with their pediatrician is going to be a recommendation. Um, Having a backup plan if something unexpected comes up. So that's always going to be recommended. This is where we ask that you look at your support system. So whether that's your parents, grandparents, uncles and aunts, whoever your trusted support system is, that you have a plan in place in case you become ill. And I'm saying like the parents and unable to take your kids to school, that you have that person, the who's next in line for you to call to step in, to go and pick up your children to make sure they get to school on time. If that was the case, that you were not feeling well or that something else came up and you were unable to take the kids to school. Um, Planning ahead for appointments, schedule medical appointments and trips outside of the school hours when possible. So I know that's easier said than done, and I will tell you guys that we understand that medical appointments sometimes are very limited in the window that they can offer that to you guys. So, but when possible, we would say yes, schedule it outside of the school day if possible. These are for routine dental appointments and things like that. If you're not able to do that and the appointment's in the morning part of the day, then our recommendation is you take your child to their appointment and then bring them to school and have them attend the later part of the day, or vice versa. If their appointment is later in the day, then allow your child to come to school and attend the majority of the day, and you take them out early to their appointment. That's going to go a long way, not only to prevent the absences accruing on their record, and but also so they have minimized learning time. That's really what it comes down to. That we're trying to maximize exposure to the curriculum that's being taught in the classrooms, and we need the students there, right? So please, any vacation. So I, we do ask families and highly recommend that you plan around our school calendar, um, any vacations that are coming up. If you have a family emergency or something comes up, we ask that you please partner and you communicate that as early as possible with your school so they can create a plan and we can see how we can support. And what that can look like is a student may be able to be placed on short-term independent study if in those cases of a family emergency where they have to miss school for a week or two due to something like that. So there are different things that we can offer, but we have to know about it in advance so we can plan accordingly with you. So please communicate with your school if something like that was to happen. And then what parents can do. So we recommend parents continue to keep your student engaged by, find out about the school environment, right? What's happening at the school. Get help from teachers and tutors if necessary. So if your student is saying, hey mom, I'm really behind in math, I'm not understanding, then let's message the teacher. Let's see what opportunities there are after school, for us to get the student the support that they need. So let's talk to the teacher, let's talk to your site administrators to see what support we can put in place for your student. We recommend you meet your students' friends. That's very important, right? I have a middle schooler now in school, and I'm like, who are your friends? And I'm trying to meet all their parents, and just to know who my student is associating with, and basically friends with at school, and then after school as well. So that's always recommended. We encourage after school clubs, even during school, other activities, extracurricular activities is always going to be recommended, for the students to kind of stay engaged. So if we offer sports, we offer in middle schools, we offer different things that are being offered, music programs. We have folclorico, mariachi, different opportunities for students. We highly encourage parents to look into that because those students, it helps them continuing to stay engaged in school. We ask that you know our attendance policy. So we will share the slides with everybody, and our attendance policy is attached to that. It's linked on there. And we ask that you keep track of your students' absences and talk to us when something changes. What happens if your student is refusing to go to school? So typically we say, let's make a sick policy at home." My mom used to say, "Hey, if you're too sick to go to school, then you're just gonna sit there and have some soup, and you're gonna read a book and do some homework." So I used to think twice of when I was gonna miss school because I was that child that would like to go outside and play soccer with my friends, and and be active. So if I knew I wasn't gonna be able to do that, I used to think twice about missing school. So making sure that we don't want to make home when students stay home like a fun place, because if the students are at home playing video games when they're sick or when they're not at school, and they're eating chips and drinking Capri Suns throughout the day, like that's hard for schools to compete with that. So we're asking you guys, like, if they're refusing to go to school, that you try to make it as boring as possible in the sense of electronics, TV, that kind of those kind of things, and then giving them academic materials, academic games, academic books for them to, if they want to do something, they can do that, right? So enforce school attendance with encouragement on earning extra time online, extra time with friends, and other type of incentives, and then enforce school absences with consequences. So turning off the Wi-Fi, taking away their phones, canceling their plans with friends and family, and then ultimately, those students that play sports is limiting. If they're not going to school, then they shouldn't be going to practice either, right? So something that we say is, school comes first, right? So it's when you get to that high school and college sports, it's going to be, you're considered a student athlete, but the first part is student, right? You have to focus on your academics so then you can play the sport that you love to play. So the earlier that we can show kids that, the better off we're going to be. And continuation of that is consulting. If the student, a lot of our kids that refuse school are saying, my stomach hurts, mom, or my head hurts, or they state that they have this, that they're just not feeling well, physically. So if that's the case, then we say, please consult your pediatrician, take them to an appointment for a follow-up, so you can find out if in fact it is a medical reason why they're not in school. We can make a referral for individual or family counseling. We ask that, obviously you take care of yourselves, that that's important. And then, we can recommend things like our parent project through the Santa Clara County. And please stay in communication with the school. And then I reiterate, any time at school is better than no time at school. So even if kids are going to be late, please encourage them to be there, is what our recommendation is always going to be. So interventions and support in regards to our things that are happening at our schools, it's going to be some check-ins and checkouts with a trusted adult. We may be doing some home visits to just check in with the student and families if we're not seeing them at home and we're not able to get a hold of the family over the phone. We may invite you guys to workshops, family workshops that are happening in the community. We're going to offer in-school counseling, expanded day learning opportunities. So these are opportunities that are happening before and after school. Referrals to outside counseling providers and other referrals for community resources. We recommend families to visit our website for additional resources. If you go to arusd.org, you can type in attendance in the search bar, but it's under our department name, which is our Student Support Services Department. You will find an attendance link there, and you're going to find a lot of information that we're reviewing today. You're going to find access to some attendance pamphlets that we have available at all our schools and other resources there for families in case they need some additional support. So I'm going to end with this. This is who supports your students at schools. So we have a robust system of support for your student when they need it. So that includes and is not limited to our school psychologists, our school counselors, our community liaisons. We now have community school site specialists. We have our administrative assistants, our health assistants, our office assistants supporting our SLS supervisors. Shout out to Fernando for helping me coordinate this tonight. Thank you so much. And assistant principals, and our wonderful teachers as well that can support if you're facing some of these difficulties of your student being in school consistently. Okay, with that being said, we're going to transition to Ms. Shane from the District Attorney's Office. Ms. Shane.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. I appreciate your time tonight. I know as parents, you all are busy. You've likely had long days, and now you're giving another hour of your precious free time to be here in our meeting. So we very much appreciate your attendance. Let's see, am I able to advance the slides? No. Next slide, please. And if you could just advance so that all of them can show. So here's why I'm here talking to you as a deputy DA from the DA's office. The bottom line is because attendance is so crucial to your children's futures and therefore to the strength of the community. The brighter that is the future of a child in our community, the stronger our community will be. Attendance right now for the age that your children are is really a predictor of all sorts of outcomes for them later in life. And it's either a good predictor because they're attending well, or it's potentially a bad predictor because they're missing too much school. So as Mr. Arahu said earlier, attendance is actually a biggest predictor of high school graduation than our test scores. They studied children who were scoring high but had more absences as compared to kids who were scoring lower on standardized tests but were in school every day. And the children who were scoring lower but were attending graduated high school at a higher rate than did kids who were academically outperforming them. As a parent, you should hear that and feel some relief. You have a big piece of control over your child's future. Just getting them to school on time every day means you've checked the most important box for their academic success. The studies also show us that children with an attendance rate of 95% or higher are more likely to earn grades of A's or B's. This makes sense to all of us intuitively. If you miss out on material, it's really hard to be a top earner when it comes to grades. If any of you have ever been in a meeting and you arrived late, let's say you missed the first 15 minutes and you showed up, you know that feeling of half of your brain is paying attention to what's being said, and the other half is trying to fill in the gaps of what you missed so that you can make sense of what's being said. That's what our children experience when they miss too much school, and that's what holds them back from earning those top marks. Attendance in elementary school is the primary correlative of high school graduation. Here's what's surprising about this fact. When we poll parents, parents understand attendance in high school is, of course, related to whether a child will graduate high school. But what parents don't intuitively know and intuitively appreciate, because it's a surprising fact, is that actually attendance in elementary school is the best predictor of whether a student will graduate high school. Next point, please. We also know the flip side is true. Chronically absent children are more likely to use marijuana, alcohol, and other drugs. And chronically absent children are more likely to grow up into adults who smoke, have diabetes, suffer from stroke and other health issues, and even have a shorter life expectancy. My kids are fairly obsessed with the movie Scrooge around Christmas time. As a result, we watch Scrooge maybe 4 times in the month of December. So for those of you who aren't as familiar with Scrooge as I am from having watched it over and over, let me remind you, there's a character in Scrooge called the Ghost of Christmas Future. And the Ghost of Christmas Future comes and shows Scrooge how scary his future will be, how sad and scary it will be if he doesn't change what he's doing now. Truancy and chronic absence is our ghost of Christmas future. These are the things it's showing us will be coming for our kids if we don't change their attendance pattern now. Next slide, please. As I said, it's usually quite surprising to parents to hear that attendance in elementary and middle school matters so much. But it's because of that domino effect that Mr. Arahu spoke about. It's because in kindergarten and first and second grade, kids are learning the building blocks that are their foundation upon which they build in third grade. Kinder through second, kids are learning how to read. And from third on, they're reading in order to learn. So when kids miss those foundational years and they have gaps in those building blocks, they feel the effects of those gaps throughout their educational career. Next slide, please. We, of course, know that education is tied to earnings. This is a graph here that shows on the left side in blue the level of education that a person received, and on the right side in green, the unemployment rate. And you see, obviously, the more education a person has, the lower is their chances of being unemployed for a period of time. Obviously, all of us want for our children that they have stable careers, that can pay the bills, that can afford them a comfortable life that they enjoy. When we think about what we want for our kids 10, 20 years in the future, we want them to have a home and to be able to support a family if that's what they want to do. And all of those things really are predicated on them getting a good education. Next slide, please. Attendance is also really crucial because going to school is in and of itself a crucial habit. Right now, this year, your child is learning a habit, and it's either a habit that's a good habit that's going to help them be a successful adult, or it's a bad habit that's going to hinder them as they get older. When you make it a priority for your child to get to school every day on time, your child is learning the habits to get up on time, to then show up on time, and to do that every day. Those are all important habits to develop for their future. I have this silly meme here of Tony Robbins walking Oprah Winfrey over some coals, and the meme says, walking into Monday like. The meme is silly, but all of us have felt that way on a Monday morning, whether it was when we showed up to our office jobs, our paid labor, or we showed up for our unpaid labor of making the 6,000th breakfast and getting the kids out the door and getting them to the park. We have all showed up when we didn't feel the energy to do so, when we didn't feel the motivation to do so. And we did that because we developed the muscle of doing so. This year, your child is forming a habit. Please remember, it's either the habit that's going to help them be a successful, contributing adult, or it's going to be the habit that makes it a lot harder for them to be a successful adult. Next slide, please. Okay, we also know that the flip side is true. Okay, so if going to school every day on time is in and of itself valuable because it's teaching your child positive things, not going to school has all sorts of drawbacks. The most obvious, which I've talked about, is that your child will be missing out on the academic basics. Relatedly, children who miss more school get lower grades. And in turn, that affects how they think of themselves. That affects their self-identity and their self-esteem. Let me give you an example. If you have a fourth grader who arrives between 30 and 60 minutes late several times a week, and that fourth grader has math as the first thing that's taught in his classroom, when that fourth grader takes his long division test or his multiplication test and he scores poorly on it, he gets a 70%. That fourth grader doesn't think to himself, oh, you know what? I always get dropped off late for school and I miss math a lot, and that's why I didn't do so well on the test. It's not how kids' brains work. That fourth grader thinks to himself, I guess I'm not good at math. I guess I'm not smart. And now that is the story that he's telling himself about his own capabilities. So please, when you're considering whether you're going to, again, get there on time, marshal those resources, even if your child is protesting and it seems like your child is the reason why you're late, it will be your child who both academically and emotionally suffers if they're missing school. The other flip side of your child being absent is it not only affects them negatively, but it affects the whole classroom. In fact, it affects the whole school. We know that schools in which chronic absence is higher than 20% have lower test scores for everyone. And of course, most of us have experienced this at some point in our life, likely when we were students. When a child misses too much, the teacher has to slow down and catch that child up. That affects the whole classroom. Kids your age are also missing out on the social aspects when they're missing too much school. Again, if you think back to that fourth grader, pardon me, who's so often late to school, that child feels the sense of being the kid who's always late. Just like the child feels the sense of being the kid who's often missing school. The kid who needs extra explanation from the teacher because he missed yesterday. That child doesn't feel fully integrated into the classroom. They don't feel as much a part of the community. They also miss out on time with their peers. Their relationships aren't as close because they're not spending as much time there. And last, we know that our kids need consistency and normalcy, maybe more than they ever have, especially middle or elementary aged kids and middle school aged kids. Fifth graders, sixth graders, seventh graders experienced COVID, and they experienced what that meant for their education. Part of healing what happened with COVID is giving our kids extra doses of consistency and normalcy. They need to know there is a structure, there is a schedule, and we stick to it every day. Next slide, please. Mr. Arahu spoke to this, but it is a point that is worth repeating. One thing that I hear very often from parents, even parents who end up in my court, is that they didn't realize how much school their child was missing. In fact, there's research that shows parents underestimate the number of days their child has missed by 50%. So parents whose kids have missed 20 days, if you ask them how many days their child missed, they'll tell you they've missed 10 because that's really what they think. So what that tells us is we are bad count takers in our own heads, right? We're bad robots at keeping track of how many days our child has been out. So we can't rely just on our own memory to keep track of those things. Instead, you need to do, as Mr. Arahu suggested, have that calendar printed out, put it on your refrigerator door, put it on the back door or the front door, whichever door you leave when you go to school in the morning, so that you're looking at it at least once a day. And so that when your child must miss school, you mark it on that calendar. That way, the number of days doesn't surprise you as it adds up. You see it. And it also is a useful exhibit, demonstrative for you as a parent. If you have a child who's saying, oh, my throat hurts, I don't want to go to school, my throat hurts, you can point to the calendar itself right there. You don't have to be the only bad guy in the room. And you can say, look, you've already missed 5 days this year. You can't miss more. You're going to fall too far behind. You've got to go to school. Next slide, please. And speaking of going to school or not going to school because you're not feeling well, another thing that we hear from parents very often is they're kind of using 2020, 2021 rules of when to keep their children home from school. But we are no longer, thankfully, in those COVID times. During COVID, a cough meant stay home from school. A sniffle meant stay home from school. A slight sore throat meant stay home from school. That was all really important, right? That saved lives. But fortunately, we are no longer in those days. It's 2025, and we're back to, does your child have a fever? Is your child vomiting? Does your child have diarrhea? Those are the types of things that mean your child is too sick to go to school. And when they stay home from school, you must make home a less attractive place to be than school, even when they're sick. I do this with my own kids. When they are home, they're in bed with a book. That's what they know they have to look forward to that day. And as a result, they're very unlikely to say they're too sick to go to school unless they really are too sick. Because staying home from school is boring. And that's by design. Your house should be boring when your child is home sick from school. Next slide, please. If you are thinking to yourself at this point, I think my child has missed a lot of school, or last year they definitely missed a lot of school, or we've already missed a few days and we're only at the end of September. I want you as a family to take some time to really interrogate why your child has missed so much school. Maybe it's because up until tonight, you didn't realize how impactful your child's absences are. Maybe your child has a chronic disease, or your family is struggling with transportation, or maybe your child is experiencing some level of school refusal, and they're the ones who are putting up a fight about going to school. Whatever the why is, the first step to take is to figure out as a family, what is that why? And then the second step to take is to talk to your school, to talk to your district. I guarantee you they will have resources and they will be able to offer you help with whatever the why is. Next step. I also encourage all of you to take the following steps in order to set yourselves and your children up for success this year. The first is to create a routine for bedtime and for wake up times. There's something called sleep hygiene. We all know about oral hygiene. Our dentist talks to us about it every time we see them, right? You need to brush twice a day. You need to floss once a day. Sleep is also something that requires hygiene in order for us to be at our healthiest. For your children, that means two things. The first, the American Pediatrics Association says that kids elementary and middle school age need between 10 and 12 hours of sleep a night. That's a lot of sleep. If you take even just the lower number of 10 hours of sleep a night, and you think about what time your child needs to wake up in the morning in order to get dressed, shower if they do that in the morning, eat breakfast, put on their shoes, 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 in order for you to get your child into the car or on the bus. Think about what time they wake up. Now just subtract the lower number, the 10 hours of sleep. That's pretty early. Chances are that puts them at a bedtime around 7:30, 8 o'clock. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the hygiene around that bedtime. That means an hour before bedtime, all the screens go off. You dim the lights. Maybe you just have a couple lamps on. You do some kind of quiet activities. You finish homework, you play a board game, you read to them. You slowly are telling their brain it's time to wind down. Most crucially is that they don't have a screen that emits blue light in front of them in that 60 to 30 minutes before they go to bed. Our phones, our tablets are designed by very smart engineers specifically in order to keep our brains awake and engaged and looking for the next hit of dopamine. So we cannot ask our kids to be in a state of arousal where they are awake and engaged and getting dopamine hit after dopamine hit, and then to just turn that off like a switch and go to sleep. Their bodies don't work like that. We need to help them power down for the night and get some sleep. The second on this list is to create a help bank. Mr. Arahu spoke to this earlier. Life's inevitabilities will occur. We know that. Your car will be in the shop. You will be sick. Maybe another child will be sick that you need to stay home with. It's going to happen. So what is the best thing to do is to have asked a grandparent, a neighbor, the parent of one of your child's friends ahead of time if they can help you out in a pinch. Hey, if I'm ever really between a rock and a hard place and I can't take my child to school, would you do me the favor of being my backup person? And I'm absolutely willing to do the same for you. Now, when the inevitable wrench gets thrown into your plans, that wrench won't mean that your child misses school or is late for school. We've already spoken a couple times about tracking absences on your calendar. Do this on a paper calendar somewhere that's visible to you every day. If it's on your phone, you now have to remember to look up that calendar every day. That's not going to happen. We're all too busy to remember that. Print it out, put it somewhere in your home where your kids can see it too. And lastly, communicate. Early and often communicate with your school. Whether it's communicating about an absence your child has, or communicating about a struggle your child has, or communicating about a struggle your family is having, you will always be better off communicating it to your child's teacher, principal, or someone at the district office. They have lots of resources that they would be happy to connect you to. Next slide. I think now we have some few minutes left for questions, so I will turn it back to Mr. Arahu.
Thank you, Ms. Shane. Thank you so much for the information. Um, yeah, if like I said, we want to thank all of you guys for being here. It just shows your commitment to your students, and we're happy to share this information with you, and happy with the outcome of making sure that we all know how important attendance is, especially as Miss Shane alluded to, that the mindset of, this is gonna, it only matters in high school. Actually, no, it matters now, right? It matters as early as TK. So thank you for relaying that message, Miss Shane, as well. So, but yeah, we'd be happy to have a few minutes to close out with any questions, and so, Mr. Diaz Luna can share on how we want to
Yeah,
just.
yeah. So as we're doing questions, I see some coming in the chat. So either feel free to enter your question in the chat or raise your hand and we'll get to you. But I wanted to turn over to our partner, Fernando Rivas, who helped organize this meeting, to share a little bit about our feedback survey and other thing.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I did want to share. We did promise a little bit of a raffle after. We did have two winners for our raffle. One of them is Wong Lee, and the second person is Rocio Monares. So if you guys can please send me like an email, and I will get back to you guys so that we can give those prizes to you guys. There will be two Kate Spade purses. But we also want to encourage families to fill out the survey. So we will also be doing two more prizes. Once you fill out the survey, just add your email to the bottom, and then we'll be able to raffle two more that way. Sergio, anything else? All right. And thank you guys again for being here. We really appreciate you guys.
And I don't see any hands raised. I do see one question in the chat around whether school consolidation affected attendance. Jesus, would you happen to have any numbers around that so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think that at the beginning of the school year, we were still working with some of our families, that students, in regards to movement of places. I can tell you that I've supported with one of my job duties is to handle intra-district transfers in our district, and I think I approved maybe 98% of transfer requests. So we were trying our best to accommodate to parents' requests. So we were hearing our parents saying, "Hey, in lieu of this middle school, can I have this other middle school?" And we did our best to accommodate. So we're continuing to work with families when things come up. Please reach out to us. We're happy to continue to support in ensuring that um, that we find you the correct placement and the placement that you want.
I do think that one of the things that helped with the attendance, because people were worried about it affecting enrollment. It didn't affect enrollment as badly as it could have. I think there was a small decline, but I think with the offerings that we were able to bring in terms of transportation from that closing school to the school that remained open, it was really helpful making sure families could still have their students attend regardless of where they were. So because of that, I think that has helped with the attendance. I don't know if there's been like a difference in trend on the attendance side. Um, is Does anyone else have another question they would like to ask? Again, feel free to enter it in the chat or raise your hand.
Um, I see one that is asking if the slides will be shared, Jesus.
Yeah, yeah,
Sorry.
we can share the slide deck out with the families.
We have one here that says, sorry, it's because there's
Oh, you're getting individual ones? So,
a one. Oh, I don't know if you guys. No, I'm not getting individual ones. I think they're on there.
so maybe I had one a little bit, Jesus. I think you mentioned a little bit about the student support teams that our district has. Um, I think it might have been the SAR process earlier in the presentation. What are some of the interventions usually that come out of that?
So, you know, we are very grateful to have a lot of partnerships. So we're partnered up with depending on what the students need, we have mentorship programs that are out there to support our students that may need a positive role model or a mentor. We also have partnerships with counseling agencies for any mental health needs, any students suffering from anything from anxiety to anything else in that mental health arena that we have the support. So depending on what school you attend, we have our school counselors. But if it's a higher level of support that the students need, we work with our great and amazing SLS team to get our families and students transferred or referred out to county services. So we have a lot of different county partners that support our schools and our students.
Maybe a similar question for Miss Alicia. Um, what has been kind of like the success when families have come to work with you? How have you helped connect families to resources to help alleviate some of the pressures they're facing?
So when they come to me, they usually come to me in court, which is obviously not the way any of us want to meet families. We really want the families to be able to solve whatever their underlying issues are and to connect to resources via help from their child's school. And if not that, via help from the school district itself. But when that hasn't been able to happen for one reason or another, and they instead come to us in court, very often they are still relying on the amazing services at Alum Rock Unified, at Alum Rock Union School District rather, and the district is connecting them to things like therapy for their child or peer supports, peer mentors, or City of Peace, an adult mentor. Um, Other times we are connecting them to services in the community. So for instance, we have a social worker from the behavioral health department who will connect sometimes the students to therapy if they want it outside of school, oftentimes parents to therapy when they are struggling with mental health issues at the moment. And then we always encourage our families to take Parent Project. Parent Project is a class designed to give parents more tools, more skills in order to parent children in what is a very hard time to raise kids. Um, Parenting is the hardest job in the world. There is no manual for it, and it changes every year because every year your child's needs change. So we really believe that parents deserve additional support for this most challenging of jobs. And we offer that through a class called Parent Project. We really encourage parents to take that class way before they end up coming to court, and your district can help connect you to the class. You can take the class online or in person. It's 10 sessions. They meet one evening a week from 6 to 8, and they have a class for parents of TK through fourth or fifth graders, and then a class for parents of middle school and high schoolers. So wherever your child is, there's a class to give you some additional supports, which you deserve.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you both for such a great presentation about attendance and the understanding school attendance. And thank you for everyone that came out tonight. really appreciate you all taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us. We'll be uploading the information onto our YouTube channel and sharing it out on our newsletter in case you'd like to share it with a friend. So keep an eye out for that. And once again, thank you and have a good night.
Thank you guys. Thank you. Have a good night. Thank you for our wonderful interpreters today for supporting us as well.
Thank you
And
guys.
Miss
Appreciate it.
Shane for being here. And remember that every day matters, every student counts. Have a good night.